Welcome to the Attention Deficit Disorder Expert Podcast Series by Attitude Magazine.
I'm Susan Kaufman here for Attitude Magazine, and you're listening to Attitude's ADHD Experts. I'm pleased to tell you today that our guest is Donna Goldberg, the author of The Organized Student, one of the first books of its kind and still the most celebrated book on this topic. I urge you to take a look for it online, The Organized Student, Teaching Children the Skills for Success in School and Beyond. Donna's going to speak for a few minutes today, and then she'll take your questions about school organization and organization, period. So thank you, Donna, so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Susan, I'm delighted to be here, and I'm going to jump right in because there's so much to talk about. So I want everybody who is listening to think and step into the shoes of their child who went off to school today. And just remember, as you are that child or your child, that you're carrying your portable office on your back all day long, holding everything you need for every subject. And every 45 minutes, 6 or 7 times a day, 5 days a week, you have to pack and unpack your books, binders, notebooks, planners, pens, pencils, iPad, calculator, graph paper, and anything else that you need for class. You need to get what you need from your backpack. So sometimes you have to dig through several candy wrappers, a cell phone, a sweatshirt that you meant to leave at home, and layers of loose papers that never even made it into folders. You have between 2 and 5 minutes to make a mad dash from one classroom to the next, usually on another floor, if not in another building entirely. Sometimes sprinting back to your locker because you needed to get something, where you have to plow through your gym clothes, an old science project, leftover snacks, a pile of textbooks in order to find what you need for the next class. After repeating that scenario 6 or 7 times, you have to figure out at the end of the day what you need to bring home. You have to pack it up. You need to get it home. You have to spread it out, do your homework, assuming you even know what that is, or call several friends to get the assignment, get it all done, pack it back up again where you can find it, and then start all over the next morning. So that's a zillion steps that we just went through. By the end of the day, your child is exhausted. By the end of the month, they've probably lost half of their school supplies. And by the time midterms or finals come around, they can't even find half of their class notes. I have spent the last 23 years organizing students for academic success. The process and methods that I use evolve and continue to evolve as education changes. What I have seen, though, is the growth of the disorganized student phenomenon and why there is a need for students to be more organized, and that seems to increase significantly year after year. So if we take a look at the disorganized student, they could have even been successful in the early grades. But as school progresses and the demands become greater, things start to fall apart. You know, in elementary school, K through 3, teachers keep everything together, parents are on top of them. All of a sudden, 4th and 5th grade comes, and teachers assume that kids have internalized basic organizational skills, that they can hand in their homework, and that they can write down their assignment in a planner, and that they don't have to check on that. Suddenly, they hit 6th grade, and now they're expected to manage multiple books, notebooks, supplies, themselves. They need to move themselves to another class, transition mentally between a different subject, be it history or science, as well as a different boss, which is their teacher, not only and their teaching style and that teacher's expectations. So that's not always an easy feat for kids. And the effects of being disorganized reach well beyond the classroom, and the consequences are great. The disorganized student also often has no system for coping. So when there is that out-of-control day or a bad day, they don't even know what to do to get back on track. They lack time management skills, which of course then leads to plummeting grades, and you get a phone call from the teacher, and that leads to a lot of tension at home. And the one thing that we don't want to happen is that these patterns continue through adulthood. So really, we need to ask each other the question, Why are we seeing so many students today with organizational issues and challenges? And what are the challenges that face them today that we weren't faced with that we went to school? So one of these challenges I've identified is technology. You know, it is pretty great to be able to be handed a piece of paper from a copier machine or something that the teacher scanned, and kids have more and more papers floating around, but we don't always teach what to do with those papers. So they are overwhelmed with handouts, worksheets, review sheets. The interruptions that they have and the distractions that they have, they've got, you know, they also think, especially ADD kids, that they can multitask great. But all the research says that you can't multitask. So you can't be, you know, IMing or texting while you're also doing your homework, and then you're so tired you need to take a break for a while and you go onto a video game that you can't disengage from. And these all become very challenging for a student. There's a change in family structure over the past several years. We certainly have more and more dual families, parents working. We have single households, single-parent households. We have children of divorce, and often these kids go back and forth to different homes. It becomes difficult. Schools have changed, too. We've added into the curriculum technology, moral education, community service. We've added so much in that the day becomes fragmented, and schools can't always get through the curriculum in a 5-day week. They've had to add a 6th day. Some schools go to week A, week B. There are different schedules to accommodate all of this. You know, I remember when I was studying, I live in New York State, and we have Regents exams. And when I was studying for my Regents in history, I remember saying to my mother, "Oh, you're so lucky you only had to learn World War I. I have to learn World War II, the Korean War, the Cold War." And for my kids and your kids, they've added the Vietnam War, the Gulf War, Desert Storm, the Iraq War, the Arab Spring, not to mention current conflicts in the Middle East, all while we still teach ancient history. We've taken nothing out of the curriculum. We just keep adding to the curriculum. And so the day becomes jam-packed. And when school ends, busy after-school schedules begin. You've got ballet, religious classes, piano, tutoring, therapy, whatever extracurricular classes your child has, whether it be sports or their art or the school newspaper. And so when children come home at the end of the day and start to do their homework, if you know what the homework is, if you can find your textbook and your handouts, then you've got a better shot that the evening will go smoothly, homework will be completed, and you start the next school day on a better note. So the question is, how does that get done? Sounds so easy, but not as easy as we think. So I have identified, it used to be 3 steps to an organized student. Recently I have added a 4th, and I will tell you, although it comes in the 3rd position, it is, and if people are looking at this online, it's slide number 11 that you can look at. It's organization in school. And that comprises the backpack, the locker, and what I call traveling papers. That's your binders, your books, your accordion folders, anywhere that folders that you have loose paper. Then there is time management. The latest step to organization that I've added is technology and how we integrate it into a student's life. And the 4th area of being an organized student is organization at home. And so, Susan, I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to be able to field, I could talk on any one of these for hours, but what I'd like to do is answer people's questions, and I can take them in any order, or we can start with organization in school, which if there are any backpack, locker questions, anything like that, that works.
Okay, great. And we have questions in all your areas, so we'll try to ask a few questions in each of your 4
And I'll try to be
steps.
brief in my answers so we can get to everything.
Okay. Let's just start with the, as you call it, the traveling paper. And someone has asked, Jesse has asked, if you could just review the 4 categories before we get started. Just repeat.
Oh, absolutely.
What are the 4 categories?
The 4 categories are organization in school, time management, technology, and organization at home.
Okay, great. So let's start with organization in school, the traveling paper problem, because we do have numerous questions from parents who say their kids just don't make it home with their homework or don't make it back to school with the finished homework.
Okay. So here's what I say about traveling paper. Over the years, I think it's important, especially when you're dealing with a teenager, that they pick the way they want to organize their papers. The one managing system for paper that I am not fond of is folders, because I think that they hold too much paper and you can never find anything you want quickly enough. So I like a binder system, whether it be one single binder for all subjects. I like an accordion file, has worked very well in recent years because most school papers do not have holes in them. If you're working off of a computer and you're printing out, it doesn't have a hole. Handouts that a teacher gives doesn't have a hole. So an accordion file, and I'll get into the details, works very, very well. And some kids even choose to do individual spiral notebooks for each subject. Whichever way it works. If they do spiral notebooks, they also tend to carry an accordion file for all those loose papers. So if we're working in a binder system, which is actually slide number 9, a binder system would be 10, what we do is try to have a clear pocket in the front. I tend to use tabs that you can put something in. So they're clear, you can put the homework in, or I use a pocket folder. Anything that they can see. If you see it, you will do it. If you don't see it, it's out of sight, out of mind. So the first section of usually the binder is homework to do. And if a handout was given or a worksheet was given, it goes right into that clear pocket. At the end of the evening, it should be transferred into a homework to do. And you can have just 2 of those in a binder if you're using one binder for all subjects, so that you can actually have all the homework to do in one place and all the homework to hand in another. One pocket should be clear at the end of the day. One pocket should be full. That's a binder system. If we're using an accordion system, I use a 13-pocket accordion system. And the first 2 pockets are either homework to do or homework completed, homework to hand in, whatever they want to call it. So that you're looking for all of your papers that you need to do that evening in the same place, so that you're not wasting time going from section to section or folder or pocket to pocket within an accordion folder. And then after that, you've got a section for every single subject that your child goes to. At the end of a unit, so if a child has been studying Mesopotamia and they're going to go on to Egypt, all of the papers from Mesopotamia have to come out and stay at home. And we can address that when we get to organization at home. The less you carry, the more organized you are. And it also helps children frame their learning. It's sort of, as you look at it as a unit or, or just the subject of what you're learning. So within a subject, you are looking at different units of study, be it Mesopotamia. From Mesopotamia, you go on to Egypt. From Egypt, you go on to Greece. From Greece, you go on to Rome. So those are all individual units, and you should be carrying the current unit. And then, finally, I should say, within that is the binder, the backpack, or anything. We basically have what I call a 4-step situation. You want to be able to constantly purge. So I call it the pack system. You want to purge your papers regularly. You might want to accessorize to make sure that you've got what you need. Categorize your subjects. And the most important is keep it up and clean it up on a regular basis.
That's great. Don, I think the question that a lot of people have is, how do they put this in place? If your child doesn't remember to put the pieces of paper in the right places, doesn't purge at the end of the day, what's the role of the parent in terms of getting this? Because obviously these things need to become habits, or they're not.
Exactly. Well, first of all, let me say, do not do this on a daily basis, because I think that you would have a lot of pushback from a kid. But if they do homework regularly on Sundays over the weekend, every Sunday you might sit down with your child for it. And if you do it on a weekly basis, it actually takes 5 minutes. And you say, let's go through until they can do it on their own. Let's go through your binder. Let's see what you need and what you don't need. And it is basically going through paper to paper to paper, section to section to section. Put back what was misfiled, put back into sections what needs to be done, and just organize it. If you do this once a week, on a weekly basis, I always suggest Sunday, because then it just sort of sets the tone for the work week, which is their work week the next week. If you do that once a week, they will be able to do, but you have to do this over and over and over again. It's not an event. It is a process. And for some kids, the paper flow is really difficult, and you have to do it over and over. I've worked with kids on certain areas that I might see them constantly over and over and over until they can truly internalize it for themselves.
Is there a timing, a developmental issue here? Because do you start certain of these activities in middle school and be more involved and then step back as high school goes on? Because as many people are posting, and certainly it's been my experience as well as a parent, high school kids tend to not want their parents intervening at such a granular level in their papers.
You're absolutely right. I realize that. So maybe you can actually get in someone to do this and and have the parents step back, because it's not, once they hit high school, they really don't want you in their life. But the truth is, children who have attentional issues need a lot more support than other children. All children who have learning issues, it doesn't matter what the issue is. A parent's involvement lasts a little bit longer than children who do not have issues, be it dyslexia, ADD, dysgraphia, or whatever challenge gets in their way. So if you get a lot of pushback from your child, that should be a signal that there are people out there that you can hire that can come in and help you get the job done.
Can we come back to the question of getting the papers into the right place? We've got a funny comment here from Angela. She says, does anyone else know where the papers, books, locks, jackets, and everything else goes after it falls into what I call the ADHD black hole? As far as I can tell, once they fall in, they're never seen again. I think that's a common question here.
It is a common question.
You set up a great system, but how do you...
You're right, but it has to be, so if it goes into that black hole of the locker, and if you want to take a look at what a locker before and after looks like, these are actual lockers that I went in and I did, I would say that pack system has to be done. So every month, if you send your child with a garbage bag or at every school holiday, and you say, empty your locker, no questions asked, just bring everything home, we'll organize it, because they certainly don't want you showing up at school to organize their locker. If you actually give everything a home, assign it a place to live in the backpack, and repeatedly try to put it there. So textbooks live in one section, notebooks live in another section. You have a better chance. This is where your bus money is. It's really a matter of giving everything a home. This is where it should live. And then letting it fall apart, because it is going to fall apart, and be very non-judgmental about that and say, well, let's put it back together. In the picture that I have of a school locker, which is slide number 7, I actually drew for one child a map of where everything goes so that they wouldn't need because they could not remember that, so that they could just reconstruct it when it was time to put it together.
Okay.
But the key is repetition, 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 and no judgment.
Right.
No raised eyebrows here.
For parents of kids in elementary school, 4th or 5th grade, no locker yet, what should they do to get kids started so that down the path for the right organization at those early years?
I think you start it the same way, but truthfully, those 4th and 5th graders have cubbies, and their cubbies mimic the same thing as a locker. Mm-hmm. They have no idea. So it may be that you sit there and say to your really younger child, well, let's make believe this is your cubby. How would you put the books in? And for someone who worked in a school for 12 years, I can tell you that the disorganized child would not even realize that if you put books in size place with the spine out, you can see what's in that cubby. But they don't do that. So again, you've got to sort of set the stage and show them. The one thing about children who have organizational issues, especially with paper flow and this, you may be the most organized parent in the world. They do not model your behavior because they visually do not see it. You need
that's interesting.
Do what you need to tell them what you are doing and put it into words. And they need to manipulate it themselves so that tactile part of their learning, which may be a stronger sense, they're able to do it that way once you've laid it out with words. Don't rely on them modeling your behavior because they don't.
Right. What's your advice for turning in homework? The comments here on this are priceless. From a 5th grader to a high school student, so many parents who say, we put the finished homework in the homework folder, and it just doesn't get turned in. And what's what one person says, what's the psychology around this? Why is my child repeatedly not turning in the homework? And mind you, we have parents of high school students saying the same thing. So
I have college students doing the same thing.
Right.
So let me just say this. That is why I use that clear folder. The minute they open a binder, it's in their face. If you want your kid to do something, if they want you to do something, they're in your face. They're relentless. And so I tend to use a lot of clear pocket folders. The brand that I tend to use are made by Itoya, and they have a flap on it so that you don't lose papers. It's a 3-ring binder pocket folder. And the first pocket is so that they're going to see that homework when they open up the binder. That's the key, is to see it. And one of the things that I've tended to do in recent years, especially with kids who have IEPs, is because this is such a problem, and for some children it is overwhelmingly a problem, and what we call the paper flow gets remediated last, we sometimes scan the homework and then email it to the teacher the night before when it's finished.
Wow, that's interesting.
I think you have to figure out what works for your child, fight for it with the school, because believe me, there's nothing more frustrating. If you think it's frustrating to a parent, how would you like to be that kid that's done that homework and can't get it handed in? They're more frustrated than you. They're not going to let you know that. But the truth is, there's not a kid in the world that, I liken it to a baseball player. If you could go to school every day and you're a baseball player and you get up to bat and you can hit a home run, meaning you can get 100 on a test, you can hand in your homework, you know what the teacher's saying, you would do it. You would do it. Why would you hit a pop fly or foul out? Something gets in the way. They're either in the wrong position, they didn't hear, because, kids who have ADHD are not always attending all the time. They cannot control that. And so you've got to have a lot of backup systems because they don't even know when they've filtered out, when they've tuned out.
You think that's part of what goes on with the problem of not bringing home the appropriate books? That's another, in terms of its traveling.
Well, I think that they don't actually take the time at the end of the day to figure out what it is. I think there's those kids that make it and have to rush to a bus. Mm-hmm. Sometimes there's not a lot of time. The ADHD kid is the kid in the classroom that's always packing up everything last, that's always pulling out everything in their binder last when you get into, out of the backpack. So they're starting behind the 8 ball and they're ending behind the 8 ball.
Right.
Which is why
someone here who says, she texts her child during travel time to the next class to remind him to turn in the homework. That'll do it, I think. That is okay. Yeah.
After a while, that will be white noise, and that child won't look at those texts.
Right.
So the goal of being organized and working with a student is always to have them be able to internalize these systems eventually. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it takes months, and in some cases it takes years. But the truth of the matter is they've got to be able to do this independently eventually. Right. So when you put a system in place, you better have an exit strategy for that system.
What about the school? A number of people have asked, whether the teacher or the school can be asked to make sure that the right materials go home with the child.
Yes, that's a good question.
To what degree is that a reasonable IEP goal, and how would that be worded?
I think if your child has an IEP and executive function is part of it, that would not be an unreasonable goal. Without an IEP and a 504, the chances of getting that, especially in the older grades, would be much more difficult.
Right.
And maybe you have to find a buddy system to begin with.
Okay.
But I think with an IEP, that would be a very reasonable request, as would be the one of emailing the teacher the homework.
Okay. Before we move on to time management, a couple of people have asked that you repeat the name of the brand. I think you said the brand of a folder or a 3-ring binder that you suggested.
Yes, it's ITOYA, ITOYA. If they email me, I'll even tell them the item number.
Okay.
But I don't remember it offhand. I want to say it's a PE50.
Okay.
We can Google ITOYA PE50.
Okay. We can put that on the website to those who listen.
Okay, great.
We'll put up your slides, and we'll put up a transcript of this, and so we'll put that information up if you send it to us as well. Let's turn to time management, which is really important for so many kids. I'm going to give an overview of time management for the disorganized child.
I'll give you a quick definition. Time management, for me, refers to the ability to prioritize commitments, schedule them with enough time to accurately gauge how long it will take to get it accomplished. And that is not only a difficult feat for students, it's a difficult feat for adults, and I'll tell you why. Because somewhere after 3rd grade, they stop teaching time. So time is taught in 3rd grade, where your child, if you remember, came home with a clock and they would fill in the hands of the little hand, the big hand, and 1/4 after. But we live in a digital world, and there are many children that do not get that concept because it's a very, very abstract concept at the end of 4th grade. And so they need a lot more practice with time management and with time to begin with, because the truth is everybody is taught to tell time, but nowhere in anyone's education do we teach time management. We sort of leave that up to every child to figure out on their own. We don't teach time management as a class. And truthfully, when a child hits 5th grade, or even 4th grade, I would say, the child that's having trouble reading, they go off to reading specialists. The child that's having trouble with math, well, they're identified. The child that's having trouble handing in their homework or working on a long-term assignment, well, that's lost to every teacher because we never check for that. And so it's left up to parents to basically move them forward in understanding time. So the first thing I would say to parents is that they really need to bring analog clocks back into the home and get rid of this digital stuff, because digital time tells you where you are in that moment in time. It doesn't have a past, it doesn't have a present, nor a future. So it's very difficult to gauge what you need to do and when you need to get it done. So I'm saying that you need to bring in certain tools to help your child. And the first one is, if you think about it, you could say to your child and check whether they can even tell time, because I've had kids that have gone off to the Ivy League schools. When I say to them, it's 12:45, can you tell that to me in the English language in another way? How would you say 12:45? And if they can't say 1:45, instantly they're having trouble telling time. And I've had adults admit that they really can't tell time because they've grown up in this digital world. So where do they get their time from? From the VCR or the cable box or the microwave oven or the computer. Everything shows them time. In digital time, it doesn't move. It's stagnant. And that's a really big problem. There are some tools that actually help. I would say, aside from having analog clocks in their room all over the place and give them for a gift, there's something that I found for younger children, and it's called mytimeplanner.com. Now, you can't use this with a high school student, but you could use this with very young students. And it's a big board, and it shows segments of time, what it looks like when it's a half hour, what it looks like when it's an hour, what it looks like for a 2-hour block of time. The other thing that I like is timetimer.com. And that is sort of a silent timer, and it is a timer where it is based on 60 minutes, and you see time lapse. And that also helps kids, especially ADHD kids, as they can't sit and focus for long periods of time. You can set it for where they're successful. So if they can concentrate or sit for 15 minutes, you set it for 14 minutes. Always make your child successful. And then after that, 14 minutes, they can take a break. Yeah.
Shelley, I just wanted to tell everyone that Shelley posted to say that they use a time timer, and it's totally fabulous, that it's really made a difference in terms of understanding passage of time. Alyssa said that also. Questions people have about time management. Are you a proponent of a schedule? Some people are wondering whether the best way to teach time management would be to say, here's our plan, fourth grader, 4 o'clock we get home, 6:30 we have dinner, 7:15 shower, homework at this time. What's your feeling on?
If you're dealing with a very young child, yes. If you're dealing with a teenager, they're not interested.
Okay.
They've done it already. So my time management tool for the older student is a planner, good planner. And that's slide number 16 if you want to go to it. And I'll tell you what the planner does and take just a minute to tell you how it works. The planner allows students to keep track of short-term and long-term assignments. They keep track of their academic as well as their personal life. They can gauge how long things can take. They can block out study time in a planner. And they can see tasks that have to be accomplished. So the planner that I suggest mimics what's called a teacher's plan book. And the one I tend to use has the days of it. It's 8.5 by 11. The days of the week are on the top. The subjects are on the side. And what happens there is that if you see how it works, you have a block for each single subject. But the one thing that is never taught is to put down your after-school life as well. And that becomes the key to the time management. Because at 3 o'clock, whatever time your child gets out of school, every single child has another life that begins at 3 o'clock, whether it be sports, tutoring, therapy, dance, newspaper. And the ADD kid needs those activities. They need to constantly be doing things that they're good at, because it is a struggle to hold yourself together all day in school. And the more you are successful, the more risks in life you'll take. You just can't take away. I am not a fan of taking away. You're not doing well in school, so therefore you can't do your after-school activities. I don't think that makes a child any more successful, and maybe it even hurts. So that after-school schedule.
Can you repeat the name of the homework planner? A number of people have asked that.
It's called a teacher's plan book.
And is that for sale?
And it's made by Need makes them, and
okay.
A lot of different companies make them. One of the companies that you can find one is Mead.
Okay,
and what
so
happens
that's the
is,
style of it then. Teacher plan book is the style, sort of.
It is a style,
Right.
and so what happens is they would come home on Monday, they would look straight down vertically, and if every box is full, that tells you you've got a lot of homework. Mm-hmm. What it allows you to do is, if you have looking across a week, let's say at English or history, it tells you what is expected of me in this subject for the entire week, whether there's a test, whether you've got a quiz, whether you've got a paper due. And I highlight those. I like to highlight those so that kids, they jump out at them. We also use something called flags so that you can flag the longer term assignments that are coming up. And then that after school tells you, so if on Thursday you're going to come home and you're on a team and you have a soccer game, but you have a Spanish test on Friday, if you're going to wait till Thursday night to study for that Spanish test on Friday, the chances of doing well are slim and none, because you have all the other subjects you've got to accomplish. So the plan book is key. Here's the $64,000 question. Technology. So technology has sort of, schools are still issuing the plan book, but it's getting much more difficult to have students write in the plan book because teachers are posting homework online.
Right. And, before you move to technology, because there's lots of people saying exactly that, just the last couple of comments about the paper planner, a couple of people have said that they use something called Order Out of Chaos, which is a plan book developed by an ADHD mom, and they, quote, love, love, love it. So I just want to throw that one out there for you. And then lots of people say, they have a hard time getting their child to write in the plan book. In fact, that's their key issue.
Okay. So then let me, the key issue there, and I would imagine it would be the same thing in Order Out of Chaos Planner. I mean, if they're posting homework online, I think that schools are a little bit behind on this. They haven't really figured out. If you're a teenager and they're posting it online, why would you write it down? That seems ridiculous.
Right.
It's just, and, it's just the opposite of how a teenager thinks. That's just not the way their brain is going to go. So here's one of the things. You have to explain to a student that the posting online is basically a place you pick up the information. It doesn't track how to get it done. And that's what a planner does. It tracks your time. And so what I often have, especially my reluctant ADD kids doing, is I have them going home, pulling out their planner. Before they start their homework, they go to each teacher's website, because it usually is an individual website that they're picking it up on. Writing most of the kids say they just print that out. That's okay, but in their planner, what they have to do for me is just write how long they think it's going to take. So they take a guesstimate. Is it going to be 10 minutes? Is it going to be 15 minutes? And they can't start their homework until they have gone to every teacher's website and either printed out the sheet, read what the homework is, and guess how long it's going to take. Because
this is really interesting. This is where you're converting the planner into a time management tool by actually helping the child lay out a schedule, in essence, for each day.
Exactly, right? But I don't want them to take the time to write it in the planner because I think that then I'm going to have pushback.
Right.
But if the teacher says to them on Monday that there's that test on Thursday, I want them to jump ahead on Thursday and write that there's a test.
Right.
So that in the planner you will have big assignments listed or due dates listed, like a paper has to be due on Thursday. Often when you hit high school, not everything is due the very next day. You've got some assignments that are due a day later, some assignments that are due 4 days later, some that are done 2 days later, some that's done 3 weeks later. Well, 3 weeks later to a kid is like an eternity.
Right. So are you suggesting that, and this is another question, that how do you convert that deadline into a work plan, which is how Debbie put the question. How do you take that due date?
Okay.
Which, then 2 days out, 3 weeks out, whatever. How does the planner work with that?
Okay. So in my illustration on page 16, in slide 16, I have these little flags. They're like little Post-it notes. Mm-hmm. And for kids that actually are visual and color means something to them, so math would be English, and there's something sticking up. It's not sticking up on that page. It's actually sticking up on a page previously, which tells them in a week and a half that there's a test coming or a paper due. And what happens is it's not enough to put the due date in. Some kids are great at working at long-term assignments in a small pace. So some kids actually save all of their long-term assignments for a weekend. Well, if you save all of your long-term assignments for a weekend and the teacher says this project is due in 4 weeks, that's really 4 days. It's not, 28 days, because if you're not working on it Monday through Friday, take away 5 days every week. The days that you've got a test, you've got to take it away because you can't work on a long-term assignment. The days that you come home, I have a rule of thumb. For every week an assignment is offered, you need to take away. If it's a week assignment, that's 7 days, it must be done in 5. If it's a 14-day assignment, it has to be done in 10. For every 5-day assignment, you have to take away 2 days. And that's what we call what if. What if you come home with a sore throat? What if the teacher throws a test at you? What if you're overloaded with homework that night? You have to be able to not have the due date, the actual due date, otherwise you're never going to be successful. You have to anticipate something coming up, plan for it. So that's what you need to do. And then you actually need to write in the planner when you're going to do it and make adjustments along the way.
Okay. So for the long-term project, then you step right out each day, which days, what the action steps are. Is that what you're saying in your plan, in the planner?
Exactly. Those can be fluid and those can change. But that due date of 2 to 4 days before doesn't change.
Okay.
If you know that you can't do a long-term assignment when you have a soccer game, then don't plan for it. Take away a day. Mm-hmm. So for every day you're unavailable, and that's the first step in understanding the reality of time. We all think we've got plenty of time, but things come up.
Right.
And with students, things come up every single day.
Right. So getting in the habit of writing down all activities and all extracurriculars in the planner.
After school is key. If you have a child that doesn't do homework on Fridays, and a lot of kids take Friday as their break day. They don't want to do homework when they come home on Friday. They've just done it Monday through Thursday. Well, then you don't have 5 days. You're working on a 4-day week for a long-term assignment anyway. So you couldn't consider that a 28-day assignment or a 14-day assignment. You got to take away 2 immediately and say you're working on 8 days. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. Yeah, a couple of little questions. Kids who have a hard time writing or who find writing slow or difficult. Do you agree? A couple of people have suggested taking the notes for them, helping them go on, see the assignments, writing them in the planner for them. And others have suggested allowing their child to take a picture in class of an assignment if it's on the blackboard on their cell phone.
If the teacher allows it, a lot of schools don't allow cell phones in the classroom.
Right. Okay.
Because they're recording teachers. So if they, look, whatever strategy will work that's in the confines legally within what a school allows, you constantly keep trying until you hit upon the system that works.
Right.
And if it's taking a picture, that's fine. If it's recording it, that's fine. But if it's a younger child that has tremendous handwriting problems, that's fine. But you can create a planner on a laptop, which I've done.
That's a question. People are wondering, is there an iPad version of a planner? Is there a planner that is...
No, there is not.
Is there no paper?
No, I've been working on thinking about doing an app because there is actually no app that works on an iPad that does this properly. None. I have looked at every single one of them. They're all too cumbersome.
Really?
It should be very simple. And this is where we're adding the technology, but a lot of the what I call the executive parts of it are far behind. I mean, there are a lot of planners out there that you can get for an app and are based for children, but they are very cumbersome.
Right.
In my mind, there's too many steps.
Yeah. Some people, my daughter uses this, Deborah posted this also, she uses an Excel spreadsheet.
That's exactly what I have created planners
It's
on.
easier to enter just field by field, more like making a note. Yeah. Interesting. On the technology subject, before we move on to organization at home, which is also, we have a little time left, and I don't want to miss that. What about the live scribe pen? Can you talk about that? Someone has asked about it, and I've always wondered as well. What's your feeling on that? Is it really something that's reasonable for...
I think for some kids it is, especially if you're in a subject like biology or in science where it becomes too difficult for you to understand. But you're not going to sit there and record the entire class. And what makes the live scribe pen useful is that you tap it when you want to understand something or you want to know what it is. And then you go home, because prior to that, everybody has said, oh, you know what we can do? We can record the class. Nobody's going to come home and listen to every recording.
Right.
But before we even do that, there are some very, very simple techniques in talking about technology that you can do with your computer at home. And I actually, one of them is to make sure that your child's desktop is organized. One of the things that I find that makes this very challenging for kids with ADD is that they don't really know where they took the note. Is it living in the cloud from school? Is it on their computer at home? Is it on the iPad? Did they take it in their planner? The problem is...
Or their phone, right.
Or their phone. We are living in two worlds. We are still living in paper heavily, and we are still living in technology heavily. And hopefully for many years, I hope we do, because not everybody's going to be successful with technology, and not everybody's going to be successful with paper. So it's very important to pick what makes you successful. And so it's okay if technology doesn't do it for you. But ADHD kids have a hard time figuring out, until they can keep it in one place, whether it be their phone or only work on, in the cloud, having it in a paper folder and this folder and that is too difficult. The other thing is that there are, organizing your computer by subject, by unit, so that when you have to go back and study, at least you can find where all the notes and homework are for, let's say, Egypt. that becomes very important, and that's slide number 21. The other thing is I have moved a lot of my kids to Macs, because Macs do a lot of wonderful things with assistive technology that is a little bit more cumbersome on a PC. So one of the things I find is, let's say, proofreading. By the end of the day, these kids are absolutely wiped out. But if you're writing on pages, and there's a way to do this on Word, I don't know, a student did it for me, I basically have it read me back my text.
Wow.
So I am not a great proofreader in general because I'm dyslexic, but I can hear my mistakes. I just don't visually see them. So I actually, whether it be an email or, whether it be reading the New York Times, I can put a speech on, and it just makes it so much easier. You can do that for editing, and so I think it becomes key. The other thing that I do is, I think we're going to hear it on my computer very soon, is I have the time announced every hour on the hour.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
And
just to
so what it
give a sense
does,
of time passing, right?
especially for kids that have a very finite time in which to do homework, when all of a sudden they hear it's 8 o'clock and it's not a nagging parent, they say, oh my God, I got 3 more subjects, I better move. And so, again, as the parent, you step out and there's that neutral voice that comes on and pushes them, right?
Right. That's
and
brilliant.
Then there are ways in which you can change the display. So if you have a child that has visual impairment, you can change the color of the screen. They tend to have a black screen with white writing. There are a lot of wonderful things without buying, because I'm sure there's an app for everything, that your computer will do if you just go into your system folder. It's as easy as that.
You know what? This, Donna, this is another entire webinar. I mean, just how you can make your computer and your devices work for you. I mean,
I said I could talk about technology forever.
Right. It was really great. And what I love is Debbie just posted that they use the cuckoo clock, which is a gentle hourly reminder. That's wonderful.
Right. I mean,
to your point about
ways.
Whatever works, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the key.
Just a
Whatever
few minutes
works.
left, and maybe you want to quickly move and say
so
something about organization at home.
4 minutes left, we're going to hit home, okay?
Okay.
And the first thing is slide number 25, for those visually looking at this. There's a desktop file box. And again, that is, there's a file for every single subject. And so as that unit finishes, and I said earlier, the less you carry, the more organized you are, you can take that out and put it in. There is the ideal way to file, but for disorganized kids, if they can get all of English into English and those papers aren't either lost or floating around, by the time midterms and finals come, at least they're there. The ultimate would be to put all of the units in order in which they were actually taught. So if it's Mesopotamia first, you would take Mesopotamia, your notes, your homework, everything, including the quizzes and the tests, put them together, mark Mesopotamia, and file it in history, and then go on to the next. So that's the filing system. Another very useful tool is often kids who have attentional issues need to be supervised during homework. So if you can set up a portable file, a portable office, I call it, so you get a tackle box or an art box, and you put all the supplies that they would need. So if it's a teenager that works on the floor, they're not jumping up for their protractor. It's in the box. If they need whiteout, if they need pencils, if they need tape. So all of the things that you would need. If they work at the kitchen table, it's easy to clean it up and move on, so that, they have everything at their fingertips and that they're not jumping all the time. The other thing is where do they do homework? I am one, I don't care if you do homework on a floor, because eventually you'll make it to a desk. But that's where the portable office works. You can't be doing it in front of a TV or on the computer, having a movie playing. That's a no-no. But Where you do it is less important to me, except if you're a roamer, because you're going to leave papers all over. But most kids don't do it at their desk because their desks are useless. And it is because if you open it up, they don't have, what you buy today is one little pencil drawer and a big file drawer. And a big file drawer is what I call the teenager's toy chest. There's nothing there that they need. And they can't get to anything. It's all stacked, piled high. So you want to actually make sure that at the beginning of every school year, all of the papers from previous years are cleared out and stored. And that's the one thing that they will never teach a child to do, is consider that a school year is a project. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. At the end of that school year, you should go through all of those papers in a poly envelope, keep the best of that year, which could hold about 100 sheets of paper. That's it. Anything more is too much, because there's only two kinds of people in the world. You either keep it or you throw it out. And they look like they look like they're absolute polar opposites, but they're the same person. They don't want to make a decision. It's vital that you teach your child how to make a decision, and that's never taught in school. So, that takes time to teach them how to do it. But I'm just going to say that the only way you're going to get it done is if these are very important parts. You have to, one, take out the academic component. This is a process. If you see a paper that has a 0 on it, or do-over, or that you got a 33 on a test, when you're working on organization, don't say a word, because you will lose focus, you will wind up arguing, and that session of organization is over. Make sure that children understand it's a process. They're not going to be perfect overnight. They're going to have lots of whoopses and mistakes and lost jackets and everything else along the way. And that you have to keep it in perspective and encourage it and remain positive, and truly a sense of humor goes a long way.
These are great tips, Donna. I mean, I think just the discipline, which we all need for our own papers, to sit down at the end of the year and say, let's sort of things and decide what we're going to keep and what we're not going to keep, is really inspired, and it's really something that we all need to learn. And so anyway, I can't thank you enough. Your tips have been incredibly valuable. We really might try to get you to come back for round 2. And thank you all for attending. And thank you again, Donna, for being such a great resource. Really appreciate it.
Well, it's my pleasure, and I hope everybody has a little tip they can implement today.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Okay.
For more Attitude podcasts and information on living well with attention deficit, visit attitudemag.com. That's ADDITUDEMAG.com.